Okay, hi everybody.
Put
It's
a little
3
arms
p.m.
behind your head.
June 15th, and we're gonna get this thing started here. We're really happy to have a couple of presenters joining us from Iowa today to talk a little bit about the Iowa Food Hub Managers Network. Just a few really quick things. This webinar is being recorded. It will be posted online on the CRFS website in a week or two, so if you do miss this or you do want to share it with somebody who wasn't able to make it, we will make that link available in the near future. If you have questions or issues with audio throughout the presentation, please use the chat pod to make any comments or questions. I'll try to sort of facilitate the Q&A as we go. I think we'll have a little bit of time at the end designated for Q&A, so if you do want to just save your questions, that's also fine. I think that is it. The last thing I did want to mention, July 13th and 14th is the next Michigan Food Hub Network meeting. This is a joint network meeting with Michigan Farm to Institution Network. It's going to be in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we're going to be touring the KVCC Food Innovation Center and Bronson Methodist Hospital. So you can visit the CRFS website, see some more information on that. There is an online registration set up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich Pirog, and he's going to introduce our guests today.
Okay, thank you very much, Noel. And again, I'm Rich Pirog, the Director for the Center for Regional Food Systems, and also the co-convener along with Noel and Marty Gerentzer with Morse Marketing for the Michigan Food Hub Network. So if you have any problems either hearing us or with the connection, just please type into the chat pod, right? And we'll be fine here. So before I introduce our guests from
That was odd.
Okay, do we have everybody back? Okay. What does it say here? I'm not sure if this is you, but the audio is very choppy.
Sorry about that, folks. Our screen just went blank, so
all right.
we'll start over here.
Yeah, and let's here. If you have comments about the audio still being choppy or the internet, let me know. Check your.
We're good. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if this is. Anyway, so before we hear from our Iowa folks, I just wanted to provide some context here. And our purpose here is not only to sort of learn a different network model of how they're doing things with working with their food hubs and how they are learning in Iowa, but it's also an opportunity for both to sort of reflect how these networks, both in Michigan and in Iowa, work within the context or universe of all the other food system activity organizations and other networks within each state. So I'm going to start by just giving a very brief overview of, again, to provide context of how we do things in Michigan and how, at least within the Center for Regional Food Systems universe, we sort of view the networks. And then we're going to turn things over to our two speakers, and they're going to tell the story of the Iowa Food Hub Manager Network, but then also share that context. So next slide would be. So the Michigan Food Hub Network began in 2012. We have funding from the Krejci Foundation and also some supporting funds from the Kellogg Foundation. And so we've been at this 4 years. This is our 4-year anniversary. We just had a birthday cake with 4 big candles that looked like food hubs, and we didn't blow them out though, because we want, metaphorically, we don't want to blow out any of our food hubs. So you you get at least a few bad jokes as part of the. That's what you get when I present. So we started out with a set of very specific goals around a learning community and a business-to-business learning network. And we not only wanted to address food hub technical challenges, but given both our funders and the interest of our own hubs, we wanted to supply healthy foods as we built the capacity of those food hubs to underserved markets, both urban and rural. And in this sort of second phase of our work, we're realizing more and more that probably one of our best opportunities is around helping our food hubs be able to serve and supply institutional markets. And so we have a very special partnership with the Michigan Farm to Institution Network, which is led by both the Center for Regional Food Systems and the Ecology Center, which is a nonprofit here based out of Ann Arbor in Michigan. And they have a promotion program called Cultivate Michigan. And this joint meeting that we're having in July 13th and 14th is the second time we're bringing both networks together to try to, again, how we strengthen across networks. So the strategies here, what do we actually do in our network? We convene not only food hub managers and food hub consultants, but really other people in the local food ecosystem here in Michigan. So we've been averaging in the last, say, year and a half, about 100 people. And we rotate those meetings. They're 3 a year. We go to different locations. We're up in the UP. We go to Detroit. We go to Battle Creek. And so it really represents the entire state. We provide, through both working with consultants and our own expertise, business and technical assistance. And we also do webinars and occasional workshops like this one. And we also have a connection. We've sent, I think, about 10 people to the University of Vermont Food Hub Manager Program. And Michigan has a good food fund, a $30 million business, loan. We're connecting back again. Okay.
We should probably power through this. I think our connection is clearly not good. So hopefully once we transition over to you guys, it's all good.
All right, good. So the Good Food Fund is a healthy food financing initiative with $30 million for both loans and business assistance. As a matter of fact, we hired Iowa's own Nick McCann to manage that. He's a point person on the business assistance end for hubs production and processing. So where are these hubs? They're in all over the state. There's about 8 of them that we work with pretty heavily. There's more than 8 or 8 sort of. There's about several others that are sort of hubs. This map also shows the hubs, the emerging hubs, and the food incubators that we have in the state. And we're fortunate as we build our networks here in Michigan, actually the incubators, there's 1 or 2 that overlap with hubs in the state, but we're trying to be able to nest our networks more and more so that there's connections between hubs, food councils, farm to school, farm to institution, and incubators. So here's how the whole picture fits together, at least from a Center for Regional Food System perspective. We actually have 4 networks that we help manage and coordinate: farm to institution, food hubs, local food councils, and a relatively new Michigan Meat network. Okay, appreciate Jeff Farbman's technical assistance there. We'll do that? Okay, we're going to do that. And they can still see the slides?
Yes.
So, they can't see me, which is absolutely no loss whatsoever. So we have those 4 networks. We do a lot we're building shared measurement and trying to get more organizations around the state in food access and economic impacts to use similar methodologies in collecting data so that we can add the data and make more of a compelling case for food system change in the state on the policy level. And our friends in Iowa actually do some really good work on the economic impact of that side. I don't want to put Caroline or Savanna on the spot, but that is something that we've learned a lot from them. And we also have several other programs, including farm to school regranting, the Michigan Food Farmers Market Association leads, and then we help them with Hoop Houses for Health, the Good Food Fund, which we've talked about, which has multiple partners, and a beginning farmer program. And so what we're trying to do is get our networks, and this is just the ones we coordinate, but we're trying to better optimize how our networks work and collect better data and make sure the grants, whether we're providing them or other foundations are providing them, and we do a fair amount of regranting, sort of like Leopold Center does grants. We want to be able to see more synergy across all of these pieces so we can have the most robust integration of a regional food supply, healthy food financing, and policy change. So with that, that's our context in Michigan. And with that, I want to turn things over. I'll let you run this, Noel, to our Iowa colleagues. And being a former Iowan, I'm very pleased to introduce two amazing local food researchers and practitioners. First, I'm going to introduce both of them, and they're actually going to speak separately, though, unless right? We're going to go Savanna first, and then Carolyn. So, Savanna Lyons is a researcher at ISU Extension and Outreach, and she's focused on financial and operational management of food hubs. She serves as operation manager for Farm Table Procurement and Delivery, which is a local food distribution company serving Iowa, and another amazing state that is on the other side of a very famous river, eastern Nebraska. She facilitates and supports Iowa Food Hub Managers Working Group, which is part of why we have her on the call. This peer learning community that has about 20 aggregators and distributors, which we're going to learn more about. Before coming to Iowa, she was the founding director of the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition, a statewide nonprofit focused on food system development, network building, and state food policy. So all these things we're talking about mean a great deal to Savanna. In addition, she supported another aggregator working group and helped launch a $1.6 million technical assistance program for value chain businesses. Savanna's got a BA from Harvard and I think just recently finished a master's degree in economics and sustainable ag from Iowa State. So that's where we'll hear from first. Second, Carolyn Krejci. And am I saying that right, Carolyn? No. Sort of.
Yeah, that's right.
Carolyn is an assistant professor in the Department of Industrial and Manufacturing Systems Engineering at ISU. She earned a PhD in industrial engineering from the University of Washington in 2013, and her research interests include food supply chain management and agent-based modeling for sustainable systems. And we're not talking about 007 there, with a particular focus on regional food systems. And she has worked as an operations engineer for Lutron Electronics and UPS. So with that, we're going to start with Savanna and give controls over to Savanna, and Noel's going to help make that happen.
All right, take it away.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, can you see just a slide on screen?
Looks good from here.
Good, okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit. We kind of adapted this presentation from the presentation we gave at the National Food Hub Conference on the role of universities in supporting food hubs. And I think that what you all are probably the most interested in is our food hub working group here in Iowa. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm still going to kind of situate it in terms of some things that Iowa State has been doing to support food hubs, because there's a history there that I think helps explain why some of this is going on. And I was hoping Nick McCann is here, and he was instrumental in kind of launching Iowa State's involvement with food hubs, and particularly helping to launch Iowa Food Hub through this collaboration between Extension and Iowa Food Hub. So he may, I don't know if he'll have things to add via chat. I was also hoping Teresa Wiemerschlag would be here, who also works for Extension and is involved with Iowa Food Hub. And we may have some other members from our group dialing in. They were interested, and of course it's a busy time for food hubs, as you all know. So just to kind of get started, so that's me. So I kind of have two roles right now. I'm working for Extension and continuing to facilitate this working group and to put together some professional development opportunities for the fall. And then I'm also now operations manager for Farm Table Procurement and Delivery. So I'm dialing in from a warehouse, which in case you hear background noise, that's why. And this all kind of started, it started in many different ways, but there was a group independent from Extension that formed a couple of years ago that wanted to, and it was a group of kind of farmers, aggregators, local food coordinators, funded through a SARE grant and a local a finance provider called Ag Ventures, to try to understand what the potential was for local food aggregation and distribution in Iowa. And so they put together kind of a series of meetings with service providers as well as food hub managers that they'd identified and farmers who were doing some kind of distribution to try to understand what the scope of this work already was and what the potential was and kind of what the will was to expand on it or support it. And so the map you're looking at right now is kind of the result of that study. And so what they did was we have local food coordinators here in Iowa around the state, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And it was kind of a snowball type interview where they talked to the local food coordinators and asked them to identify who was doing this kind of work. And then they identified folks, and then the interviewers who were part of the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture at Iowa State then contacted those folks and started to kind of survey them about what their challenges were. And so we identified through that process both these sort of emergent potential zones of aggregation and distribution that weren't really doing it yet, but we're looking at ways to do it or doing feasibility studies. And then we also identified current aggregator distributors. And so there were 31 of them altogether, food hubs or food hub related activity. I think the food hub related activity is the blue dots, and then the red dots were active aggregators. And so what they found out, and so this is pretty new and small in Iowa. I think it's fair to say we're not really at the scale that Michigan has in terms of, well, first of all, in terms of produce production, but also just in terms of the development of these activities. So there's a strong focus on direct-to-consumer aggregation. There's sort of a range of business models operating and a range of levels of development. So what they found just from these 13 folks that these 13 food hub managers or kind of proto food hub managers that they identified was $4.5 million in total gross revenue. So not, obviously that's not a large volume of sales per food hub, but growing quickly. 58 people were involved or partially employed in some way in putting these food hubs together. Might have been included some very part-time people or individuals who were shared with other organizations, selling products from 459 farmers, and 62% were reported to be profitable. So I don't think that that's inconsistent with what we see around the country with emerging food hubs. And so just quickly, I don't want to harp on this too much, but these are kind of the approaches that Extension has taken to supporting food hubs. Starting years ago with funding that became available, and then kind of through the present. So I'm going to talk about each of these categories of support. And I guess the history that's kind of important for understanding. I just want to make sure I'm good on audio here. Okay, if anybody's having trouble hearing me, just let me know via the chat box, please. So this is kind of a map, and this is an aging map at this point, but of different regions that were covered by local food coordinators or regional food coordinators in the state of Iowa. We have a history going back over a decade to when Rich Pirog was here in Iowa and kind of first launched this idea first with a seed grant in Northeast Iowa for local food coordination and capacity building, value chain development. And then other regions throughout the state began to receive funding through the Leopold Center and other funders to sort of to hire these local food coordinators who could kind of look at value chain development, convene the different pieces of the puzzle, and try to figure out how to fill in the gaps. And we still have those folks today. I think we have 17 or 18 local food coordinators operating regionally throughout the state. And so those folks have helped to push forward a lot of this work. And so I'm kind of employed through the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture, which is a grant-making entity at Iowa State, and then also through Extension, so it's a collaboration. And we've had this grant-making program for quite some time, since 1987, but about a decade ago, again, when Rich was here, we launched this local foods initiative, which became a really important part of our work and our funding. And so currently there's 8 to 10 projects going at a time, and with these $50,000 to $70,000 grants. And food hubs have become a bigger and bigger part of those receiving the funding. So just to give you a sense, I'm having trouble going forward here. let's see. Okay, just to give you a sense of some things. So, and these are, again, not huge grants, but they've often been used for feasibility studies and business planning. So you can kind of see this progression over time from 2007 and 2011 and 12, when we were seeing these feasibility studies at different sites in South Central Iowa, in Northeast Iowa, in Central Iowa, and then grants for market development in 2014. These were just the applications that were coming into our program and getting funded. I guess I'm going to have to scroll through this manually, so I apologize for any weirdness. And then these are kind of some of the more recent funding proposals. So we've seen new nodes for existing hubs, locations, recognizing that they don't necessarily want to acquire an entire warehouse and set up a whole new distribution system of their own, a whole new system for managing information and taking orders, but maybe they want to become a node of an existing food hub that can help to provide them the product and where they can aggregate product from their local producers. And so we've had a couple of proposals for that. And then getting more into operations and logistics in 2015 and 2016, and the work that Carolyn's doing. These grants were both for Carolyn's work, actually, at different food hubs. So this kind of shows like how the food hub community in Iowa has been progressing over time, and how this university support has been important in making that happen. And then there's also been this education and outreach role, and a lot of that has been coming from Northeast Iowa and the work that Nick McCann was doing when he was there, and now his successor and Teresa Wiemerschlag working up there they were part of the pilot program for Group GAP, the national pilot program, and they were able to do that in Northeast Iowa, and now they've applied for funding to expand Group GAP. I think they're actually patterning this on things they heard about going on in Michigan, which is exciting. They're looking at figuring out how to expand that Group GAP program to cover as much of Iowa as possible, and to work with other food hubs here through our network. So that's a good thing that we have in place. Providing technical assistance for farmers. There's been a lot of farmer readiness work, and I see Teresa's picture, so she may be a presenter with us now. So I might ask if she wants to speak up when I'm done going through this slide. So working a lot on farmer readiness, working on outreach to buyers and schools. Teresa has developed cycle menus with schools, which is a really interesting story in itself, and has created some great resources on that. Board development and sharing best practices. So this has kind of been started through a partnership between Extension and Iowa Food Hub in Northeast Iowa, but I think the benefits of that partnership are now starting to extend to the rest of the Food Hub community, for example, through this potential for a shared Group GAP program, and also through some research that we've been publishing. And is it possible for Teresa, are you interested in talking at all about the role of Extension in supporting food hubs? Speaking to this slide, I don't know if she's able to speak up. Maybe we can try this again at the end.
Sure. Sorry to promote you suddenly there, Teresa. If you are able to speak and you do want to say something, there's a little mute microphone in the bottom left corner of your screen. If you roll down, it will pop up. But we can follow up on this later. Oh.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm here. I was just scrambling to a quieter corner. But I would benefit Savanna from asking the question again.
Oh, that's fine. Maybe, well, so I just kind of talked through this slide. Do you have a visual now? Are you looking at the webinar slides?
Yep.
Okay. I was just wondering if you wanted to add anything about kind of the different ways that Extension has been supporting food hubs in Northeast Iowa, or expand on any of these points that I just went through that are on the slide.
Yeah, we've always viewed, well, Extension was the key partner in starting the food hub in Northeast Iowa, based off of, farmer demand and interest in what are the things that needs to happen to make this aggregation piece come together. As the food hubs continue to grow and take off and sustain itself, we still serve in this technical assistance role, or the new term now is the value chain coordination role, where we can help prioritize and do some of these extra things regarding research and education and training for farmers that Food Hub staff often find not enough time in the day to take care of. So Savanna has some great things listed on here and examples of some of the things that we work on. I'm actually working from the Food Hub today, so we're giving a tour to a group of public health people that want to learn more about food system work in Iowa and how that looks. So it's definitely something that's a regular part of my job.
Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot. But so one of the nice things that came out of that is that Iowa Food Hub has been able to make transparent a lot of their financial information, kind of their operational strategies. And so they were the first Food Hub that hosted our Food Hub Managers Working Group meetings. And they were able to just provide a lot of really great information and set a really good precedent for kind of being transparent with each other about where we're at. And so I think that helped to get our group off on the right foot. So I'm going to continue here. How am I doing on time, Rich?
I think we're doing pretty good.
About 15, maybe 15 more minutes of presentation.
All together with me?
All together.
Okay, all right. So here again, education outreach with Iowa Food Hub. So they've been a key partner with Extension. And then what we've been able to do with that is to develop publications for food hubs for an audience in Iowa, but also nationally to kind of learn from some of the experiences of Iowa Food Hub. So this is a publication that we put together on managing cash flow for a small food hub that's just getting started. And you can find that on, if you go to the Iowa State University Extension store and look up Food Hub, you can find most of our publications there, or you can go to you Google local food team at Iowa State University. You can also find on our Food Hub page, you can find a lot of those resources. And I could also send that link to Rich in case he wants to circulate that to folks. So through that collaborative research, these are just some of the things that we've been able to publish on. So the Worksite Food Box program is a popular model for a lot of food hubs. Iowa Food Hub has used that model and published about it with some examples of budgets and other things. Using accounting software for food hubs, we did kind of a step-by-step guide using QuickBooks to create traceable orders, using purchase orders, and production planning for aggregators. Okay, this is the good part. So the Food Hub Managers Working Group came out of that early series of meetings that was held by a couple of other organizations interested in aggregation and distribution, and they found there was a lot of interest among Food Hub managers in having meetings just for managers. So these have been small meetings in Iowa. We have them quarterly. We're not on the scale of like 100 people, and we don't really have we're not inviting kind of partners and service providers. By and large, this has been just Food Hub managers and then one or two other support people. So Carolyn was invited by the working group to start attending meetings because she was providing a lot of assistance to various food hubs in the group, and then I've been facilitating as a part of Extension. We were actually asked to do that by the group that started this outside of Extension, so we were very happy to be invited to take this important role. And so these are just some of the folks you can see but we've had about 20 different individuals representing 15 or 16 different aggregator distributors of some kind around the state, whether it's processing, direct to consumer, kind of wholesale distribution. This is just like part of the foundation that group and the series of listening meetings that they held before we started. They identified some of these challenges that are probably familiar to you all. And so we've had these quarterly meetings. So they're held at food hubs. We've had 4 different meetings at 4 different food hubs. And we take half of the day for managers of the host hub to do a deep dive into their own operations. And so they share financial information. They talk about their sales strategies. They talk about operational challenges. They talk about their equipment, where they bought it, how much they paid for it. They talk about their software. They show their software. They show their metrics, whatever operational and financial metrics they're using. And so it's been a really great insight into how people organize their data and access resources and buy equipment. And so I've just listed some of the things that we've talked about at the meeting. So we've had facility tours, and kind of at the first meeting we went through and we really had an in-depth introduction to every food hub in the room, which was interesting. And then since then we've started inviting some presenters. So we've often gone inside of our group for presenters. We had Red Tomato come and do a webinar for us while we were there. So they kind of zoomed in and we got to listen to them and talk with them. That was wonderful. They talked about pricing and sales strategies, especially for wholesale customers. We've been working a lot on this question of cross-hauling and inventory sharing, which was the first topic that came up at the very first meeting, was how can all these food hubs collaborate? And I think some of us were a little surprised at how excited everyone was about buying and selling to each other. And so that's what Carolyn is facilitating, which she'll discuss. And then she also did an inventory of distribution routes in the state. So she presented that. We've discussed planning for growth, break-even points, so kind of looking at how to think about food hub finances and what different researchers have said. We've talked about these different aspects of food safety and PACA requirements, and then hopefully at the next meeting we're going to be doing like a deep dive into Iowa Food Hub's finances and looking at key metrics calculated for Iowa Food Hub as sort of a workshop to help managers calculate their own financial and operational metrics, which they'll be able to do there at the working group meeting. So kind of an interactive session on metrics. And just quickly, so Carolyn's going to talk about this multi-hub inventory sharing project that we're working on. We've also been working on kind of professional development support. So we knew that Michigan was offering scholarships for people to attend the Vermont certificate program, and we asked if folks wanted to do that, and they were hesitant to leave their hubs at this stage. I think maybe next year we'll look at it again, but they were interested in going to the National Food Hub Conference, and they were interested in a short course based here in Iowa, so we're trying to put that together. And then there's also a lot of interest in some kind of a shared training to help producers generate branded materials, photographs, and marketing materials, and maybe work more effectively with some of the online ordering portals we have, or kind of supply food hubs with the marketing materials they need to be effective, working with customers. And then also talking about packaging and kind of standard pack sizes and those things, which cause confusion for a lot of people. So there's some interest in sharing education for producers, figuring out how to get together on that and maybe get a grant together. And of course, folks really like the working group. They keep coming. We've had really good attendance every time, almost perfect attendance from everybody who's been involved. People have come back at a very high rate. And we've gotten this really great feedback about the chance to see the facilities, to be able to collaborate and leverage grant dollars. We received a SARE grant together for this inventory sharing project, and to be able to kind of be honest with each other and foster trust for future collaborations by seeing each other face to face. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carolyn to talk more about some of the technical collaboration that's going on.
Can you see my screen?
Looks good from here. Maybe you get into presentation mode.
Let's see. Oops, sorry. Full screen mode?
Yeah, that should work.
Is that okay?
Looks great.
Great, thank you. Okay, so as Rich mentioned, I'm Carolyn Krejci. I'm an assistant professor here at Iowa State. I do not have an extension appointment, actually. My role here is teaching systems engineering courses and then doing research. But I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work with regional food hubs and regional food systems here in Iowa since I started here 2.5 years ago, and have gotten some nice funding opportunities through the Leopold Center, which have supported my students and supported our work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we've done over the past 2 years. So overall research objective, what we're trying to do here is to develop quantitative and data-driven supply chain management tools that will improve regional food distribution efficiency and effectiveness. And I guess I should say we are also trying to modify kind of traditional or standard supply chain management tools to fit the needs off of the socially responsible piece of food hubs and regional food systems to match those needs to more traditional metrics and tools, which is really interesting and can sometimes be a challenge. So what we're trying to do is select appropriate logistics performance metrics for producers and food hubs, implement methods to collect data and assess these metrics, and then design and implement tools and methods to improve processes, and then of course using those same metrics assess whether we have actually and to what degree we've been able to improve those processes. So current projects, and as I mentioned, we are fortunate enough to be supported on these by the Leopold Center, so 2 grants with Leopold Center right now, as well as funding from SARE, supporting that fifth item down there. So I'm going to talk about each one of these separate pieces of this larger food hub project that we've been working on. So this is one of the first pieces of the project that we started working on, my students and I were working on a couple years ago. So it's to design, focusing on quality assurance in food hubs, and this is more focused at the individual food hub level rather than the network, food hub network level. So the idea is to design and implement what's known as a balanced scorecard to enable food hub manager to assess and communicate producer performance over time. So giving feedback to producers essentially on how well they're doing on various performance metrics. And so one of my master's students and I worked with the Iowa Food Cooperative and worked with the food hub manager there to determine which metrics were of interest to him. And so you can see there's an example there at the bottom: quality, packaging, delivery, responsiveness, cost, and different weights on each one of those general categories of producer performance. So we developed this balanced scorecard, and that actually comes from, that's a concept that comes from the American Society for Quality. This is something that we used at an organization that I previously worked at with our suppliers. It's very effective. It's not, the idea there isn't to, be punishing your producers or giving them some bad report card on a regular basis. It's nothing like that. It's a communication tool, and the hope is that you can give them good scorecards and encourage them to keep up the good work. So where we're at with this right now, so the student that I had working on this graduated. He developed a prototype of the scorecard for the Iowa Food Cooperative. It has not yet been implemented, but I have a new student who's actually at the Iowa Food Cooperative right now, who is working with the manager to develop, and with other stakeholders. That was one of the things we learned from this project, is that incorporating the input of other stakeholders, including volunteers at the food hubs, volunteer managers, the producers themselves, is really important to getting implementation. So that's what we're doing right now. That's a work in progress. We've also done a little bit of work with a couple of the food hubs on matching supply and demand. So this is not so much on demand planning with the producers, but really more looking at sales data, historical sales data from the food hub to understand and identify trends. And we've been doing this kind of at the request of food hub managers. They have this data that's been collected, it's sitting in databases. They'd like to be able to use it to make good decisions. And so that's what we've been helping them out with. So providing some analysis to give decision support to food hub managers. So some of the decisions that managers have been interested in, they've asked us for help with, for example, should I bring on an additional producer? Should I bring on an organic producer when I currently have a conventional milk producer, for example? Those kinds of questions. And so just being able to visualize the data and summarize it to help them make good decisions. Another piece of this larger project involves transportation costs. So the idea is to use data and modeling to support food hub transportation decisions. And this is particularly important. We've been working with farm table delivery, so a big thank you to Savanna for helping us get the data that we needed to advance this part of the project. So decisions like how much to charge per mile for pickups and deliveries, whether or not to accommodate certain pickup and delivery locations, and what data is needed to support these decisions, and how would you go about collecting it, and is it feasible? So this was something that was this is a piece of the project was stalled for a little bit, and we've gotten some momentum, gotten some data thanks to Savanna, and we're moving ahead with this. This project, I'm collaborating with a couple other faculty in my department who are focused on human factors and ergonomics. So we're doing workflow measurement and standardization with several food hubs throughout Iowa. We started with the Iowa Food Cooperative, working with them, and talking with some other food hubs about doing this. So the idea is to observe and perform time studies of food hub employees or volunteers with a focus on improving efficiency, accuracy, and safety of their operations. And what the food hub managers have asked us for is to be able to determine appropriate labor requirements for specific tasks and workloads. Be able to determine how many volunteers do you need for certain periods in the day to receive goods from producers, to pick and pack orders for customers. So there's that, and then also a big goal that we have with this project, which is funded through the Leopold Center, is to develop standardized work methods and training manuals for food hub employees and volunteers, which currently do not exist, at least for the food hubs that I've been working with. And this is something they really, really want, especially because volunteers tend to, sometimes, not all volunteers, some volunteers tend to come and go, and it's nice to be able to train them methodically and quickly. And then lastly, this part of our project, which Savanna talked about, referred to a little bit previously, which is funded through Leopold Center, but also this a nice SARE partnership grant, which involves 4 food hubs, which you can see on the Iowa map there. So it's the Iowa Food Hub, Farm Table Delivery, Iowa Food Cooperative, and the Iowa Valley Food Cooperative. So the idea here is to develop, as well as the producers that are working with them. The idea is to develop an inventory tracking system to support an existing transportation and warehousing coordination that is occurring among these 4 food hubs. And I have to say that this existing coordination, I had nothing to do with coming up with that. The food hub managers were the ones that created this system. And they should be really proud of that, because it actually works really, really well. It's at a small scale right now, but every other week, the truck driver from Farm Table Delivery there in western Iowa drives all the way to Des Moines there in the center, and then over to eastern Iowa, dropping off and picking up product, and helping each one of these food hubs and their affiliated producers to extend their market reach across the state. So it's very cool what they're doing. The food hubs and the producers would like to grow this. And so one of the things that they've asked for help with is tracking inventory. So right now there's really not much of a system for tracking the movement of food across the state. It's really done by phone calls, emails, text messages, that sort of thing, which has been working pretty well for the most part. But definitely having a more systematic method of doing that would be very helpful. And so that's what we're doing. I have a couple of graduate students who are working on it right now. In fact, they're going to come and update me on their progress after this webinar. So I'm very excited to hear that. They're doing some really good work. The idea is we want to develop a shared IT system, so shared among the 4 food hubs, involving labels, scanning, and then an inventory management system of some sort. And so this is going to require, so I said, significant producer participation. We're still trying to determine what level of producer participation will be required. Certainly it will involve them following the methods that we give them and labeling appropriately and that sort of thing. So we're piloting this right now with a producer, Country View Dairy, up in Northeast Iowa, who's been very helpful so far in getting this kicked off. So really excited about this project. It's moving forward, and I think there's a lot of potential benefits to be realized once we get this implemented. So this figure is my graduate students actually pulled this together after many iterations, talking with food hub managers, trying to understand how food is moving throughout this coordinated system. It's actually very complex, but it works really nicely. And so this is where we're at. We've made progress since then, but nothing quite ready to show for today. So this is the system. Like I said, it starts out there at farm table delivery, and then producers will drop off food at the various food hubs, or sometimes the farm table delivery truck will pick it up on the way, and then deliveries are made to appropriate food hubs along the way. So it's really helping people out. It's reducing the amount of transportation that's required on the part of producers and food hubs. It's making things more efficient. Potentially, this is one of the things we're looking at going forward beyond just inventory tracking. We're hoping to enable the cross-selling of inventory from one food hub to another. So if the farm table delivery has a huge surplus of sweet potatoes, and Iowa Valley Food Cooperative over in eastern Iowa is like, hey, we really need sweet potatoes, but none of our producers have any forest right now, that we could make that happen. Right now, there's a little bit of that going on, but it's a little bit ad hoc, and we'd like to make that possible. So that's part of this project. So I think at this point, the extension piece of this, let's turn this back over to Savanna. I can keep the slide. I can move the slides for you if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. So this is kind of from our original presentation that focused more on the role of the university, but something that I think we learned along the way was that it's important to make research collaboration an opportunity that's open to all the food hubs, to the whole community of food hubs in the state, so that everybody has a chance to benefit from research collaborations. And I think Carolyn's work has been great because she really has extended it to a variety of different business models and folks. And we're kind of trying to spread the love, I guess. Supporting learning communities has been really valuable. I think that Extension as a whole has kind of learned about the importance of communicating with the public about roles and intentions of support for food hubs. I think I don't know what the situation is in Michigan, but there has been the perception in Iowa from some producers that food hubs are competition, especially when food hubs are operating in the retail space and selling food boxes or things similar to CSAs or directly to consumers. And it's less of an issue, I think, with the folks with the co-ops. We have a couple of co-ops that operate kind of like online marketplaces. That hasn't been as much of a we haven't heard as much about that, but we have heard some kind of concerns around food hubs like Farm Table Delivery and Iowa Food Hub that play this different role. And so it's been something that we've had to navigate. We've realized that staying in touch with the community of farmers in the state is really important. And also talking about the end benefits, like why are we doing this work? I think staying focused on the mission of serving farmers, and food hub profitability is such a challenge that it's really easy to focus in so much on profitability and cash flow. At least in our discussions that we have, that we sometimes forget to sit back and acknowledge why we're really doing this publicly, to publicly acknowledge that. So that's really important. We're working through this every day at Farm Table Delivery, where I am today, trying to stay in touch with producers and help them to remember that this is a service for them, and not just a business that exists to perpetuate itself. And sometimes it's hard to communicate that. So, Carolyn, go ahead.
So I just mentioned a few lessons learned over the past couple of years. Is one of the things that I have learned kind of as a new researcher is that giving collaborator stipends when doing research or testing out new tools is key. People have been really good in general about helping us out, but I think that giving stipends is a good way to say thank you very much for helping us, and also lends a little bit of, helps with accountability, I guess, as far as implementation of different things we want to try with our research. Developing formal and technical assistance agreements with mutual expectations, that's been something. So all this research that I described today has I've been able to do this with the help of my really, really outstanding graduate students. One of the things I have to be careful of is protecting them, because they're very, very smart people, very talented, but they have a lot of things that they have to do, including coursework and thesis work and all of that. So they cannot necessarily be consultants on call all the time, even though sometimes that's happened in the past. So we just have to be careful about that. So setting expectations. implementation of a new system can be difficult and time consuming, and so the researcher has to be upfront with food hubs about this, and food hubs need to commit to follow through. So a new system, so for example, the quality assurance system that I mentioned previously, not easy to get that implemented as with any new system. So just, I think, on our end, being upfront with the food hub manager, saying this is what it's going to require. Yes, it's going to be probably kind of a pain at first, but you're going to see these benefits in a short amount of time. And food hub saying yes, okay, we will do our part to make sure that research outputs are that we can learn from what we're trying, from what we're piloting. Identifying and incorporating all key stakeholders who will be implementing a new system into the process, as I said, with the quality assurance project, that we learned this. This is very, very important. And setting boundaries around the scope of work, especially for students. So I mentioned that earlier, just making sure that the students don't get completely overwhelmed, because as you guys probably know, there's lots and lots of good work that can be done to help regional food hubs and regional food systems. But we do need to bound that on our end a little bit. So, but overall, it's been really, really successful. These are just some of the lessons that we've learned over the last couple of years.
And just to highlight the collaborator stipends, we really have tried to reward food hub managers whenever they're contributing information about their hubs, whether it's to Carolyn's research or to the working group. So we pay hosting honoraria to the food hubs that host our meetings, just because they're taking the time to plan, and they're also providing so much private information about their businesses. And that's something that our steering committee, we have a steering committee of 4 food hub, well now it's 3 food hub managers, who kind of set the agenda for the working group, and they've reminded us how important it is to include those stipends and that support for managers, and all of this has been really driven by managers. Like, just to give an example of the kind of collaboration that Carolyn is helping to facilitate. So at Farm Table Delivery has been acting as kind of a delivery service that operates between 2 different food hubs, Iowa Food Co-op and Iowa Valley Food Co-op. And they have producers that are part of each of their respective networks that want to get products back and forth to the other co-op. And so Farm Table Delivery does these deliveries from one place to the other, but we have products coming in to Iowa Valley Food Co-op on a Tuesday that stay overnight in their cooler and are then delivered on a Wednesday or picked up on a Wednesday by us, taken either to Iowa Food Co-op or sometimes back to our warehouse, and then distributed to customers in Omaha on a Friday. So there's 3 different entities involved in that kind of supply chain, plus the farmers who are bringing products to Iowa Valley Food Co-op and to Iowa Food Co-op. So, part of how this got started was that Iowa Valley Food Co-op wanted to know how should we be charging for this time that products are spending in our coolers overnight. First of all, we don't know how much it's costing us, and so we need to figure that out. And second of all, we need to be able to sort of monetize our loading and unloading of products and that cooler space. And so, and then it became, from this end, it's like, well, we also want to know, when did our stuff arrive? Did everything arrive as expected? Because we weren't there to receive it. It was another entity that was receiving it. And so how do we kind of track these items as they're moving along the supply chain to where they're supposed to go? So we're doing it now, but it's about kind of documenting it and understanding the process better and having real-time information about where the products are, which also helps with food safety and transparency and everything else. So I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think what we'll do is just do a few Q&A minutes here. Jeff did type something into the chat pod there, and I can read this out. Carolyn, can you share some results that when you shared with the hubs, they were really surprised or had a major aha sort of moment?
Yeah, sure. So with the data analysis, that actually has, that's something that the food hub managers had asked us to do, to look at their historical demand and look at trends. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind to answer that question, is that being able to see their data and to visualize it, just something as simple as a plot that shows how demand for particular products or for particular product categories has changed over time, even down to the level of daily over a distribution cycle, how demand fluctuates. Things like how sending out a reminder email to consumers can cause spikes in demand. Things like that, just being able to see that graphically actually has been really huge. I got a lot of good feedback on that, being able to support them in good decision making. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Great. I see another one here. Another question for you, Carolyn. When the system software you are working on is complete, will it be open source or available for free to hubs outside of Iowa?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that is one of the requirements that we're trying to meet in developing this, is trying to make it specific enough that it meets the needs of the Iowa food hubs, but also general enough that this type of system can be used by other networks. So that's a challenge that my students are well aware of, and they're working toward that. So the answer is yes, definitely going to make that available. Mm-hmm.
Great. I see Connor has his hand raised. Connor, I can't quite figure out how to just turn your mic on here. Do you mind just typing that into the, typing your question into the chat pod for us?
And while we're waiting for Connor to do that, this is Rich Pirog, and something, since I'm somewhat familiar with the Iowa system and the different pieces that have come in, and Savanna sort of provided a lot of context about how the Food Hub Manager network operates, but has all these has grant support there. There's in Iowa, there's a lot of grant support. There's other networks that convene, and if I'm not mistaken, is it fair to assume that a lot of those Food Hub managers, even though they're very busy, that they do take advantage of the other networks and the other projects, and they have relationships with other organizations in Iowa? Would that be a fair statement, Savanna?
Yeah, I would say so. And I didn't really talk as much about RUFUSWIG, which is our network of local and regional food coordinators and organizations that are supporting local food around the state, which now has meetings that are over 100 people every time. And so several of our Food Hub managers are also part of that community. They either wear multiple hats as local food coordinators, or they just are plugged into that community. I think that I think we're still, because this kind of Food Hub collaboration is so new, I think we're still learning how kind of the RUFUSWIG community could be supporting food hubs with things like training for producers or other kind of supportive events and professional development that that's specifically geared towards farmers working with food hubs. But yeah, that's definitely, and I think the food hubs, many of them emerged out of the community of local food coordinators and RUFUSWIG.
Yeah, and I bring that up in part because and we were just Noel and I are looking at who's on the call, and obviously we have on the webinar, and we predominant number of folks from Michigan and a few from Iowa, but our statewide Food Hub network meetings tend to attract all of these other players, and we in some ways our Food Hub network statewide meetings are in some ways more like your regional food system working group meetings, except they have a bit more of a Food Hub focus. We do other things to help the managers. And my point in all this is that in any state, it's really important that all of the partners that are doing food system work are networking with each other and are connecting. And there's that thirst for that networking. And my guess is if you didn't have some of these other elements in Iowa, like ReeferSwig and like, the grant programs and things like that, your Food Hub Manager network might want to connect with a larger network, because they already are, and that's what lets them sort of get what they really need from this managers network. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think the two are closely tied to one another. I also, and it helps that there is this broader conversation going on around local food and institutional marketing and all that kind of stuff. I think one of the challenges is, and I've seen this in a lot of other parts of my work, is there's sort of this nonprofit for-profit divide that sometimes happens. I think that there's a farmer-driven community of aggregation and distribution that farmers who are just running their own products back and forth and want to do it for other farmers, all the way up to farm table delivery, which is a farmer-run distribution service. It is a food hub, but it's a for-profit. And I think that so for example, it doesn't know how to, like, the owner isn't comfortable in the grant making world, doesn't really know how to access charitable funding, doesn't really understand how charitably funded entities work, and could probably benefit a lot more from the ReeferSwig community, but is still trying to bridging a little bit of a cultural divide. So I feel like that's a challenge. I don't know if this would probably be another good question for Teresa, who's been around ReeferSwig for a long time, and kind of how ReeferSwig connects. It looks like, I'm not sure if she's still.
Before Savanna, before we leave this, there's probably about 4 people on the call that know what the hell ReeferSwig is, and would you just go ahead and spell that out for the group?
You want me to do it?
Yeah, you can do it. I'm a Michigander now.
Right. Yeah. So ReeferSwig it's been around for a little over a decade, and it is this community of. It stands for Regional Food Systems Working Group, and is this community of people, practitioners who are working usually locally or regionally within the state, but sometimes on a statewide basis, supporting local food and building value chains. And now, I think a lot of the people who have been involved are these people who have a job description that is to be a local food coordinator or regional food coordinator, but there's also a lot of other pieces. So there's people who are running food hubs and connected to value chain work. We have members of Practical Farmers of Iowa and the Iowa Farmers Union, which are both farmer-driven groups that attend. We have a lot of folks from Extension. And ReeferSwig is interesting because it's kind of bounced back and forth between different host entities or facilitators, but it's continued to exist because there's a real will to have this statewide conversation. And so we meet quarterly, and it's over 100 people. And we started to tack on kind of an annual training for local food practitioners as well, to get everybody together. So
Great.
Answer the question.
You bet. Yeah, and we've got some other questions here that Noel will facilitate.
So I just want to loop back. Connor did put a question in the Q&A pod here, and it's about the shared IT platform. He says, I'm curious who will manage the system once it's developed, including ongoing maintenance and developing new features. That's a good
question.
Yeah.
That's a good question, and that's something that we are keeping in mind as we develop this, is that my students sadly will graduate and leave, so they can't be available long term for supporting the system. Certainly they will be at first, make sure everything goes well. And even I I want this to be a system that the food hub managers and the producers own, and that they're able to maintain. And so that's our goal, is to create a system that is user friendly and there's the ability to, if not adding new modules, I'm not sure about that, but at least taking what we build for them and be able to grow their own business within that, and have the system continue to work. So that's one of our goals, is to make it such that it's user friendly enough that a food hub manager can tinker with it a bit as needed, and not have to be an expert or a wizard in computer science or computer software engineering or anything like that. And hopefully, that's what we intend. So
great.
it's a challenge.
And then Nick McCann has a quick question here as well. Following up on the aha moments, do you have numbers that show the impact of some of these activities on farmer sales as well as food hub profitability? And he says, in parentheses, I'm thinking transportation optimization, historical demand analysis, etc.
So that is that's something that we are going to. So for the SARE funded project on the inventory tracking, one of the things that we put into the proposal were particular metrics that we need to compare before and after. Not so much transportation optimization, but one of the metrics, the big metric that we were focused on, is increasing the market reach of producers. So a producer in Eastern Iowa can grow their business and be able to sell to customers in Western Iowa because of the support that this inventory tracking system is providing to the coordinated transportation. So yes, now none of the five research items that I presented, they're not complete. And so I wouldn't say at this stage that we have any data right now to be able to say that yes, we've been able to improve food hub and producer business by X number of dollars, or by so much, so much percent. But that is something that we are capturing as we work on these projects. So we're cognizant of that.
Great. Any other questions out there, folks? Oh, one more. Carolyn, is there a tentative schedule for when the software or beta test version may be available?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the SARE project, I believe we have the funding. The proposed project was to go through spring of 2017. So that's, in theory, at least when we should be able to have the, so I think we had 5 or 6, I can't remember, I think 5 or 6 producers who are going to be part of this kind of piloting the system. And so by next spring, certainly we want to have all of those, at least those 6 pilot organizations online and participating in everything running smoothly. So that's the goal as of right now, is by next spring at least to have those folks online. And if everything's running really well and everything's working, we can hopefully get everybody on board. So I would say within the next 6 to 8 months.
Excellent. Give everybody another moment here in case there's any questions out there.
One thing that has come up for us is that almost all of, not all, but many of the food hubs in Iowa are using local food marketplace, just by coincidence. And so that's another potential. We don't know how that fits into Carolyn's project yet, and it kind of remains to be seen. But they've also expressed interest in facilitating ways for food hubs to work together, because we all happen to be using that software with the exception of 2 food hubs.
That's the one that
are part of this collaboration, one of which might be switching over. That's another potential site for collaboration.
I should say that in an effort to make this system generalizable, one of the things that at least for now, we've decided is we do not want to make this system reliant on local food marketplace. I mean, we want this to be something that any food hub, that has their own website, their own software in-house, or whatever they have to make it function with that. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a lot of different platforms out there, and folks have different reasons for using different platforms. So,
and as many of the folks on this call, including the Michigan Food Hubs, know, we've done our own feasibility study of a common IT platform, and one of the reasons we wanted to have Carolyn and Savanna on this webinar is. In Michigan, we have a wide range of sort of the size of food hubs, and we really wanted to hear more about how you were approaching these things with this SARE grant, because there may be some lower cost ways to collaborate and market successfully that we're missing here in Michigan. So we really appreciate learning more about what you folks are doing in Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Well, unless there are any other questions, I think we can adjourn and say thank you very much to you both for joining us today and presenting. And we'll have this recording up on our website in a couple weeks, so we'll be sure to share that link when it's available.
And thanks again to Caroline and to Savanna, and you and your Food Hub managers are always welcome in Michigan. We just want you to know the door's open. We give you a free pass to every Michigan Food Hub Network meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.